Death. Rumi says, as I walk towards you, every step is a blessing. And I guess this is death, maybe not the way society thinks about it, the way the thought forms are about it. This is the blessing of death. This is the doorway to higher life. Why look at death? Another teacher I really enjoy is named Ram Dass. Ram Dass suggests keeping death at arm's length prevents us from embracing our lives as fully as we would with mortality closer in our consciousness. With both death and love, it is the dissolving of boundaries between ourselves and the mystery that loosens the hold of the ego and allows the soul to be revealed. So if you meditate a lot, perhaps you are already in contact with that which is beyond your ego fearful self. Yeah? Or perhaps the elementals won't let go and they give you a lot of trouble, or the thoughts. Or I'm constantly trying to find thoughts that are higher and better and more resonant with what I know or believe already. So that was Ram Dass. Fear of death. And Bailey says, it is the limited vision of those identified with the form which has so consistently nurtured the fear of death. Bailey again, the fear of death is one of the great abnormalities or distortions of the truth, distortions of divine truth for which the lords of cosmic evil are responsible. When, in early Atlantean times, they emerged from the place where they had been confined, their first great act of distortion was to implant in human beings fear, beginning with the fear of death. From that time on, men have laid the emphasis upon death and not life, and have been ridden by fear all their days. Yogananda, death was to have been a conscious, happy transition from the changeful body to the changeless spirit. Satan so influenced man's consciousness to desire lasting happiness in the physical body that death became a dreaded, painful parting from the mortal form. And it's fair enough, you know. It's quite interesting being alive, isn't it? And having a body and everything else. And sort of Yogananda says death must be good. Otherwise, God would not have ordained that it happen to everyone. Why live in fear of it? And that's going to take a shift. That will take a shift. So, one of the most straightforward, and this is a wonderful compilation called Death, the Great Adventure by A.A. Bailey. And I highly recommend you read this if you're interested more in the topic. And we've been told, make sure you use your discrimination in anything you think of, hear of, read of. But it's beautifully clear what Bailey suggests. For the average good citizen, death is a continuance of the living process in his consciousness and carrying forward of the interests and tendencies of life. A continuance of the living process in his consciousness. Consciousness remains the same, whether in physical incarnation or out of physical incarnation. Development can be carried on with even greater ease than when limited and conditioned by the brain consciousness. Sounds like good news to me. She does write about, with so much attachment to the physical, the period after death can be one of semi-consciousness, a failure to recognise location, and of emotional and mental bewilderment. But we have been told many times, the angels are there. The angels are there to help us through, if we do go into that. Yeah? Time is now non-existent. He becomes consciously aware of himself. This involves a clarity of perception unknown to the average man whilst in physical incarnation. There ensures invariably a moment of direct soul contact. It has a definite soul effect, something like the long and strong pull of a bell rope. For a brief period, the soul responds, and the man sees the experience of the past incarnation spread before him like a map. And then it says, we isolate 3 factors of the life which has just gone. And this is 3 seeds we bring into the next incarnation. And the first seed is to do with, determines the nature of our physical environment. The second, our etheric. But seed 3 is the good news, I think. The third seed brings the man again into relation with those he previously loved or with whom he had close contact. The familiar and the loved will still remain the familiar and the loved, because the relation has been closely established over many incarnations. Bailey also talked about groups. It can be accepted as a fact that the group idea governs subjectively all incarnations, and that reincarnated man is brought into incarnation not only through his own desire for physical plane experience, but also under group impulse and in line with the group karma as well as his own. So we better get to like each other, I guess. We go round and round, round and round. All right. Resistance. Yogananda's guru, Sri Yukteswar, wrote a very strong piece about, just as a long-caged bird habituated to its confinement is reluctant to leave when offered freedom through an open door, so also the soul bird of paradise on the threshold of transcendence in death must overcome an instinctive unwillingness to forsake its accustomed captivity and dare the vastness of its native I don't want to let go. The next thing might hurt, Ram Dass talks about, we spend most of our lives complimenting each other on the spacesuits we're wearing. Ego to ego. We spend most of our life doing that. Oh, your spacesuit's on nice today, Well, yeah, why not enjoy all levels of existence? But for me, my soul invites me to immortal life, while my ego holds fast to what it knows or thinks to be in support of its continued reign. And for some reason, the last few years, I've thought of my ego like an inner child. I can't just dismiss it. I have to welcome it, love it, nurture it, care for it, make it part, like Rumi said, invite it in. Be your wholeness. So, if a stranger were to call you and say, I'm never going to ring you again, okay. If a loved one were to do the same thing, it would hurt profoundly. So we have attachments. And we work with our attachments. Andrew Harvey wrote a beautiful book on Rumi. He says, as long as we remain ourselves the story, the biography, the vanity, the self-obsession, the addiction to the body, we will remain within the world of time and space, and death will terrify us. Another story from Yogananda that really affected me positively. He suggested during the Spanish Civil War, the soldiers on the battlefield suffered. They suffered fear, they suffered pain, but as soon as they died, they realised the whole thing was an illusion. Yeah? They realised it was a role they were playing. God gave them that role as a soldier at that time in history. He says, after its victims have been thrown from their bodies, they realise it was only a horrible dream from which they have awakened. They know they are not dead. This is a great metaphysical truth. So death is not the end. It is a freeing of the consciousness from imprisonment in the physical dream body. That release brings a sense of great freedom. He also goes on to say we should never seek death. Don't worry, it's just a dream, but don't seek death. Bailey also talks about birth establishes the soul in the true prison, and physical death is only the first step towards liberation. Khalil Gibran, for what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Bailey, death can best be regarded as the experience which frees us from the illusion of form.